Hi class, this is your instructor, Skyroff, and I'm here now for the second part of the final exam review, and I will keep this one brief as well. As you all begin to prepare for the final exam, I'll take that back. As you all continue to prepare for the final exam, just bear in mind that the majority of the test will come from chapters 11 and 12, with a great bit of information then being made up from that comprehensive test, meaning the comprehensive information. It will come from, of course, I would say those preceding chapters, being from chapter 1 all the way up to chapter 10. Having done such, let us now begin. So on the test, you all will be tasked with knowing about the nervous system. And as I say, you'll be tasked with knowing about the nervous system, I'm speaking to how the nervous system is divided. And if you know where I'm going with this, you can go back to where we were in chapter 10, where you learned about the nervous system. We made something such as a flowchart. In that flowchart, we wrote down nervous system, and then we began to divide it. And we divided it up into what is called the central nervous system, being made of the brain and spinal cord, and of course the peripheral nervous system, being made up of the cranial and spinal nerves. We then divided the PNS into the sensory division with our sensory receptors and the motor division. So the sensory division is what conveys sensory input to our central nervous system via those peripheral nerves, whereas that motor division is what, of course, is taking impulses from the central nervous system, and then it goes down on into the somatic nervous system as well as the autonomic nervous system, which are those two divisions of the motor division of the peripheral nervous system. So that somatic nervous system includes skeletal muscles, and the autonomic nervous system includes smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and glands. So I'll stop that there, but you should have a very well understanding and grasp of what I just briefly reviewed. So on the test, please ensure that you know about the brain. The brain has been described, and you should know each part of the brain with those cerebral hemispheres. Of course, the cerebellum, the midbrain, the pons, medulla oblongata, and I'll just stop there. And with that, you should know, I would say, from the lecture given on the autonomic nervous system, a number of questions will come from that. So make sure you have a firm grasp of the ANS. With that, make sure you all take time to go through those clinical applications you all find in chapters 12 and 11. And with that, make sure you know about pain, because we can all sense pain, and we sense some degree of pain. And we all have that same threshold for pain, but what differs with pain is our tolerance for pain. So having done that, just make sure you all know about the continuum I mentioned in that same lecture. I got to a continuum of which that was there for, I guess you'll call those traumatic brain injuries. So with that, we went through the concussion, the contusion, the subdural or subarachnoid hemorrhage, and of course we got down to cerebral edema. Those are all things you all should know well and know about. With that, make sure you all know about those vital centers and where they are located and what they do. Along the way, make sure you all know about the receptors we have within the body. And I say those receptors because we have those receptors that are sensory receptors, and we have those receptors that are not sensory receptors. But more specifically, I'm referring to the chemoreceptors, those mechanoreceptors, those stretch receptors, those nociceptors. Make sure you all know the differences in what types of receptors there are, and not just them being classified by type, but also being classified by location. Along the same way, make sure I haven't forgotten about taste and the different types of taste sensations that exist. Along with that, what else is there to know, huh? I guess what else there is to know is make sure you all just take your time and, having gone through those lectures, study. I'll be blunt and say that I've looked at whether or not you all have viewed each lecture, and just make sure you all take out the time, because those lectures were meant to be looked at, notes to be taken on, and studied at that time. So having waited and not done it yet, or having just done it this week, it would not bode too well unless, of course, you have a lot of time to put into study between now and the day of your test. So with that, there are going to be true and false questions and even multiple choice questions. I mentioned figures in those lectures. Please go back to those figures and go back to those lectures to see which figures that they are. And to get down to homework, just make sure you all know that we went through drug classes, meaning we went through the beta blockers. We went through those that are called angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. We went through the Zydes and Mides. They call those diuretics. We went through the calcium channel blockers. So I hope that you all can read a short answer question and, of course, assess what you should know about that said patient and why that drug will be given and even that drug's effects. You'd also know that I'm going to ask you about concepts taught in chapters 11 and 12 to get you to, of course, answer those questions. And when I say concepts, we got to, of course, traumatic brain injury. We got to how those meningeal layers are there and how they affect the brain, and even how our brain is with our sutures as opposed to the brain class of a child, such as my young daughter, which has those fontanelles. But of course, you should know how, if in the event that someone has, so just go there, some hemorrhaging to occur, how on earth it would be affected by way of some thinner of blood, a blood thinner. So with that, make sure you all also take the time to review cerebral vascular accidents and the importance of FAST. I did say FAST, it's F-A-S-T. So with that, you all should be able to describe what a cerebral vascular accident is, including both types of causes. So yes, what causes it with both types of the cause and the differences. You should also be able to explain what effect or effects it has on the brain, lifestyle factors which increase the incidence of such, and how to diagnose and treat such. So on to other things, class. What you all should be able to explain is those events occurring at, of course, during a nerve impulse, including the voltage where appropriate. You all should be able to explain the events occurring at the neuromuscular junction. You all should also be able to describe those 3 metabolic routes the body takes with food, including, of course, excess carbohydrates, lipids, with a type 1 diabetic having not taken his or her insulin, and of course proteins. And there better be, of course, what is called deamination that somewhere therein. And then along the way, make sure you all can explain how negative feedback and positive feedback mechanisms affect homeostasis. So with that, you should be able to describe how our body responds to a drop in blood volume by way of our pressure-sensitive baroreceptors. So with that, you should explain that full renin-angiotensin-aldosterone mechanism, and of course include each of the steps, each enzyme or enzymes, and hormones, starting of course with the kidney and ending with those 4 fold effects. Along that same note, I should be able to have given to me from you, of course, what condition or disorder could result from this mechanism, or of course what goes wrong with that autonomic nervous system that relates directly to this, and of course provide each of those drugs with its effect to appropriately treat the condition in this instance. So with that, if you prepare well, you'll do well in the test. I've provided you all with lectures, and of course you all should have taken notes, asked questions during the conferences or lectures, or even stopped by during office hours, or even emailed me, or even called my office telephone number. I am available to you all for assistance, class, and I'm here to help you. However, it takes time to learn this, and of course, if you haven't done those lectures yet, you may not know what to ask. And just keep in mind, class, that these past 2 lectures have been so short or so brief to allow you all the time it takes to prepare for this final exam. So having listened to this lecture, and of course that prior lecture, of course, being Thursday, I would hope that you have taken all of that time left thereafter to complete your homework, to read, to review, to write, to make sure that you are appropriately prepared for the final exam. That is why the lecture has been so short. Otherwise, please let me know how I can help. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and just make sure you all prepare well for the test. This has been your instructor, Scholar Huff, and I thank you all for listening.